today I'm cat sitting, so I've got one behind me, and I have this one here.
Oh my gosh.
And the
Well,
last,
they're really.
I don't think any of you have actually
Oh my
been to
goodness.
this house because the one time I tried facilitating from this house, I locked them outside. I
I
locked them
was
in the
there.
bedroom. You were there.
I was
They
there.
they
Oh
got
my gosh, yeah.
free and
Yeah,
they sound like human children. So they were
yeah.
crying and whining. And so today I just thought I'm gonna have I told on Meetup, Bella, I said I'm gonna have a very noisy meditation. Come if you dare.
You know what? They just want to join the meditation, so you can't
That's
stop
all.
them.
Exactly, exactly. As long as they don't jump on the laptop, I think we'll be fine, isn't it?
Yeah.
We are a very forgiving
Oh.
bunch. But that's so cute, Michelle. I love your little
I mean, you put
dance.
bring your pets. So I thought I'm not going to be not letting because I don't have a pet. So it's closest I could come.
That's absolutely cool. In fact, I also said babies, and I said,
Yeah, you
I just
did.
thought anybody who sometimes that's an obstacle to practice, isn't it? But when you think that you can practice anywhere with with cats and babies, and the funny thing is, as soon as I was walking into this flat, there's a baby immediately one floor above that was really yelping away. So I just thought, there you have it. Now, if the baby cries, we're gonna be cool because everybody's gonna be expecting it.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Shall we make a gentle start?
Sounds
All
good.
right. I think Julie might join us. Okay. Okay. So grateful to you for joining me in today's practice. And we'll begin, as we always do, by initially just creating this little bubble. You can call it a segment, you can call it a new part to your day. This 1 hour that we have together, when I ring the bell, we will release everything that happened up until the point of the ringing of the bell. And if you like, if visualizing it is a little bit easier, and it's almost as though we were getting onto a train with two pieces of very heavy luggage. On one hand is the past, very heavy. It's got all of those pieces, everything that we've been through from the day we were born up until the moment the bell is rung. And on the other suitcase, the future. Every worry that we have, every anxiety, every concern. And it doesn't matter even if it's real, if you're very optimistic about the future, we're just going to release it. And on this train, up until now, what we've been doing is we've been in this train for a very, very long time, this train called life, this journey called life. But what we've been doing is we've been resting one of these suitcases on our laps, very heavy. So legs are starting to feel a little bit numb. And the other one, nowhere else to put it. So we're resting it on our heads. So the neck's getting quite tired. All of a sudden, when the bell rings in this practice, you discover that you're surrounded by luggage compartments that you never needed to rest it on top of your head. You never needed to rest it on your lap. So when I ring the bell, we'll just place these pieces of luggage in their correct places and enter into this new chapter, this new segment. Start loosening your neck because you no longer need all of that tightness, that stress that a few moments ago you needed in order to keep your head upright and hold all that weight. So feel your neck muscles loosen and relax themselves. Just leaving enough to keep your head upright. You can feel the breath comfortably flowing through your throat, through your windpipe. You can feel the swallowing process through your neck. And then you can move a bit lower down into your shoulders because the shoulders have been quite tight. And what we do with the shoulders is we simply surrender the shoulders to the weight of the arms. So we let the arms do the work. We let the arms pull the shoulders down so that the shoulders, they begin to drop. And then feel this weight dissolving and from the shoulders, almost as though you were visualizing a little waterfall, a very soothing, comfortable waterfall flowing downwards, relaxing all the arm muscles, the biceps, the triceps, your elbows loosening, your forearms, your wrist, your palm and the back of the hands, and all the way down to the tips of the fingers with their joints, with all of those tiny little joints, which seem to point towards how straight or how bent your fingers are. Taking in all of the sensations that are arriving through the tips of your fingers. And this waterfall, it now flows through your chest and your upper back. It reaches all of the organs in between, moving into the mid regions of your body, the stomach muscles, the lower back. What we're seeking to do is to simply release and relax, to let go. No longer needing the tightness and the tension that we once needed when we were holding on to all of that baggage. And the pelvic region, down into the legs and the knees and the calves and the ankles and the feet, all the way down to the joints which make up the toes. And now when I ring the bell, we'll kind of step outside of our bodies just so that we may observe it. You can observe it from the front where your computer is, or you could observe it from above, wherever you're comfortable with. But when I ring the bell, what we're seeking to simply reach is that point of completely letting go of all the effort involved in sustaining our body, because we are beginning to touch on that part called well-being. The very same way the breath unfolds without any effort, the very same way our hearts keep beating and our blood pumps through our veins without any effort. We're just going to allow the body to be as it is. You can see your face and your shoulders and your chest. Noticing your posture. Releasing all judgment so that there's no right posture, there's no wrong posture. Whatever you're comfortable with. Just sitting and breathing. And entering into a deeper state of just being. So what we will discover is that the same way in which our hearts beat and our blood moves through our bodies and our lungs extract oxygen from all of the different gases, our immune system is always working in the background. And we simply allow the immune system to reawaken, once again regaining control of the body. Although control is a slightly harsh word, because it's always there, working, balancing. In a moment, you hear the ringing of the bell. And this time, let the sound waves from the bell move through your body. Through your body. Each bell an opportunity to dissolve the form, entering into a deeper state of allowing, a state of allowing that allows, along with these sound waves, allows any remaining pockets of tightness within the body to dissolve. And our reason for entering into this particular part of the practice is simply because, more often than not, because of how identified we are with our mind, we tend to relive events in the past and often worry about the future. And over time, pockets of tension and tightness, they build up within our body and they become the norm. We we barely even know they're there until illnesses and dis-ease surface. And so when you hear the ringing of the bell this time, remember how our bodies are made up of atoms and molecules. Just like this computer in front of us, just like the chairs next to us and underneath us, just like the walls, atoms and molecules with nothing but space in between them. And it is through this space that we will invite these sound waves to move through our bodies. And as the sound waves move through our bodies, we will begin noticing which parts within the body attempt to hold on to these sounds, attempt to resist, attempt to bounce these sounds off them. And these are the knots, these are the pockets of tightness. And so when the bell rings, you can visualize these sound waves a little bit like, yes, of course, sound waves are invisible, but they act very similarly to ripples on a still pond. When you drop a pebble onto the center of the pond, these little ripples begin to appear and they move in circular directions. And so let's invite these sound waves to move through our bodies. We can allow these sound waves to move through our eyes. And because the eyes are in front of the brain, we'll invite these sound waves to move through the whole brain. The brain, which has less to do than usual, just because we've switched off most of our distractions, our televisions, our radios, our conversations. But it still continues to regulate our breathing, our heartbeat, and so many other bodily functions. But less to do, and these are more related to the sense of being that we are beginning to touch on. And if these sound waves move through your brain, notice how a chain reaction begins to occur. The skin around your scalp, it begins to loosen. The muscles all around the scalp, all the way from the forehead to the back of the head and that area where that opens up into the ears, they begin to loosen. And then inviting these sound waves to move through the facial muscles, the nose and the lips and the cheek and the eyelids, all loosening, all relaxing, all simply being. your jawbone, your teeth, your tongue, and of course your ears, those very points within the body that translate these sounds, that tells you that this is a bell that's ringing, that's resonating. And even as we spend a few moments with the ears, let's use this as an important aspect of our practice, because we all go through our lives with the relationships around us. We have conversations, we have discussions, we sometimes have quite heated discussions. And of course, we hear cats and dogs and crying babies. And right now, we discover how these sound waves, how they move through the air as vibrating air molecules. That's all they are. If you can see the sounds around us, including the sound of this bell, as simply a chain reaction of vibrating air molecules, and that's no different from the words that are coming out of my lips, no different from the words that come out of those people in our lives. It's vibrating air molecules, devoid of meaning, neither good, neither bad, neither rude, neither polite, until much later they move, they enter into our ears, our earlobes. We all know that they're shaped in such a way as to invite these sounds in. And then these air molecules, these vibrating air molecules, they move in, and then they reach the eardrum. They move through the passage, they meet the eardrum, and the eardrum, it begins to vibrate. And then at the other side of the eardrum, tiny little bones begin to vibrate. And somehow magically, these tiny little bones, they create these electrical signals that move through the nerves and move through the brain. And still they're just sort of like data readings. And then we have this entity called the mind, this energy field called the mind. And then that's where we begin giving meaning to these sounds. And every word that is entering into your experience from my lips just sounds, but because you know the English language, because I'm speaking the English language, your mind begins to attribute certain meanings to every word. And each and every one of us will have a very unique and specific meaning that we attribute to these words, depending on our experiences from our past. And so we begin to give meaning to everything that we hear. When I ring the bell, let us embed this practice into the deepest part within us so that we take it with us. So that we begin to tap into the space or the zone where no matter what enters into our experience, we reach into a space where we have the ability to either disregard or give our attention to these sounds. Discovering our ability to choose the thought that we may even use to filter these voices around us, these sounds, in particular those who sometimes, for those in our lives who sometimes upset us and create that experience called annoyances or anger or frustration, so that we may remain within this space of stillness. Because this, the core, the essence of this practice, let us remind ourselves, is in practicing how to feel better in this moment called the now, without asking the world around us to change. And in this particular practice, it will be this noisy little cat, or the puppy dogs, or the barking dogs and crying babies around you. But our practice is about having the ability to stabilize, to experience the stillness by simply allowing the world to be exactly as it chooses to be at that particular moment, at this particular moment. And this includes the thoughts that are moving through our mind. I'll ring the bell so that we can turn the spotlight and shine it upon our minds, just to notice what's going on within the mind. Because this is, after all, a very precious opportunity. We've turned off our distracting televisions and radios. We've asked our family members and friends for a little bit of privacy. Most of the things that stimulate our minds, we have somehow, to a degree, to an extent, been able to control them. And that makes this the perfect moment to observe the mind and its movements, so that we don't see the thoughts. And the way in which we make this practice very comfortable is by simply reminding ourselves not to see our thoughts as fact. And in order to do this, a very simple practice that I learned is to simply use words or labels. Label when you notice your mind moving. And usually you'll notice it's moving into the past or into the future. You simply label it as thinking, thinking, thinking. And when I was in the monastery many years ago, the monk, he told me to you do that, but rhyme it. Think when you breathe in, think, ing. When I notice the mind thinking, think, king. And so you begin to recognize that it's the mind that is moving. And whatever you see in the past, whatever you see in the future, not fact, simply little thought bubbles, which you will notice popping as soon as you bring this needle called awareness to them. They pop, and then you find yourself back here in this present moment. And we'll also remind ourselves that any indication that we are complaining about something in the present moment is usually a very good sign that we have identified ourselves with the mind. For example, if there is a noise that's bothering you, it's simply because the mind remembers what quiet was like or what quiet should be like, and it pushes against that sound. And if it's your active mind, if it's your active mind that is the obstacle that is troubling you, it's also because your mind remembers all of those previous practices that you've had where your mind was absolutely still and silent, and it was beautiful. The mind remembers that magnificent sunset that you experienced, or standing on the beach with the warm water brushing against your ankles, where the conditions were ideal and perfect and you came into alignment. And it wants to go back there because there's something about the present moment that is less than ideal. Comparison, identification with the mind, what the Buddhists call attachment to the past or even the future. I'll ring the bell so that we can release all of these comparisons, these standards, and arrive a little bit more completely and more fully into the present moment. And then suddenly you're fine, whatever's happening in the mind. Whether you're thinking about your shopping list or what's on the menu tonight, you're fine with it because you're beginning to understand that that's the nature of the mind. It's like this little playful monkey that needs to always do something. But how do we get a little bit more comfortable with the mind? By stepping into the present moment, which is quite inconsistent from everything that goes on in the mind. Because as you notice, the mind, it creates time, it exists with the past, in the future. And when we ground ourselves more fully into the present moment, we stop moving with it and instead develop the ability to observe this movement. And a moment ago, when we started this practice, we spoke about a train journey. Has it ever occurred to you how, when we're in the train, we know how we're moving because everything outside isn't. The world outside the trees and the buildings and the bridges that we pass, those aren't moving. It's just us in this train that's moving. And so, for there to be movement, for there to be change, there needs to be something larger that isn't changing, that's more consistent, that's more stable. And it's this part that we are beginning to tap into, the present moment, accessible through all five senses. We can begin with our eyes, even though for most of us they're closed. But just the very fact that the eyelids are shut to reduce the number of distractions that we have. A practice that we normally associate with sleep and rest or naps, where we move underneath thought, is a very powerful indication that we are in practice simply because we are fully awake, alert, aware of the movements within the mind. And you can still see the shadows through your eyelids. And of course, if your eyes are open, whatever it is that's in front of you, around you, but releasing the need to conceptualize and define it, simply observing, releasing the meanings that arise when you look. In fact, it's a bit like looking for the first time in newness, in freshness. And then the ears, taking in all of the sounds, from the sound of this bell to the sound of my voice and everything else around you. Our doorway into this present moment. If we were in a house with 5 doors, and then the sense of smell and the sense of taste, also opening us to this present moment. And for most of us, it might simply be the absence of a smell or a taste, unless you have some incense or perfume or something else in your room or space. And then the final door, quite a large door, this one. The surfaces around your body, your skin. And not only the skin around your body, but the skin within your body, the very sensitive areas within your nasal passage, which seem to indicate that process called breathing. That surface underneath your body, which is resting on the chair or the cushion or the mattress, or if you're walking, the ground underneath the soles of your feet or your shoes. the temperature, how flexible and fluid and comfortable your clothing is, its ability to wrap itself around your body and bend to the contours of our bodies. And then it becomes a little bit easier to observe our thoughts. But instead of the moving train, we have become the earth, the bridge, the trees, the buildings, the roads. And it is the train that is moving. Relatives, relatively speaking, of course, from Einstein's point of view, because everything's moving, everything's changing so long as it's made up of atoms and molecules, just for the purpose of stability and stillness and grasping this movement. And now that we've entered this house with 5 doors, we begin to discover that there is an inner sanctum, a space within this home where we can be safe, we can be comfortable, we can find peace and quiet. It's a little bit like that quiet library or your altar, or and this doesn't it doesn't need to reflect your physical home. This is a space that's always been here. If you could ever visualize that perfect spot within your home, if you had the funds or the ability, maybe you may already have it, that space where you can truly be alone and yourself and comfortable, knowing that you're never truly alone. Now, let's move into this little sanctum, and we will use our breath as our doorway into this little space. A space that appears little, it only appears little because of this house with its 5 doors. But soon we will discover that it is so much more, that it transcends this house, that it moves beyond form. And so we bring our attention now to our breath. Once again, we bring our attention to our breath and its rhythm. It's comfortable rhythm, it's natural rhythm. The way we normally breathe, not forcing, not changing, but simply heightening our sense of awareness as the air flows in and then out again. But we're going to focus a little bit more on that sense of touch that exists within the nasal passage. We're going to awaken those areas just outside the nostril, the exit points where the upper lip is. And we're going to discover how far down the upper lip we can still experience our breath, both as it enters and as it leaves the body. And then we'll follow the breath. We'll use our nasal passage as a bridge, like a little passage that takes us into this inner sanctum. It's almost like a little secret room that we've known has always been there. If you like books like Harry Potter and mystery novels, you'll know that there are always these hidden little chambers somewhere. And so we're going to follow the breath inwards so that this breath will take us there. And so you follow the breath, the slightly cooler air. You feel the cooler air make its way all the way up your nasal passage. And I can never really detect that exact point where it bends downwards, but it's so much easier to notice it flowing down the throat. And then the chest, the lungs pushing against the rib cage pushing against the chest wall. And even as you exhale, continuing to notice how the breath makes its way down into the stomach. In fact, releasing all of the rest and just focusing on the stomach for a few moments as it balloons as you breathe in. The insides balloon, the skin around it stretches. And then the exhalation, which I always tend to see as a little bit more interesting, just because of how warm it has become, how it magically transforms itself into something quite humid, where the sensations are so much more vivid, where you can detect it moving up your throat, through your whole nasal passage, out the rims and down the upper lip. All we're seeking is the present moment. And these sensations, they bring us into the present moment. Just so that we can use this moment as a new beginning, where we discover this relationship that we have with our mind. One where we have the ability to observe it, from this space that we are beginning to discover as we breathe in. Follow the breath in. Notice where it leads you. Beyond the stomach, beyond the chest, beyond the lungs. That pause between breaths, that quietness, that stillness, that space where you no longer need to give meaning, define, explain, compare. That space that simply just is, where you can breathe a sigh of relief because you can completely just be exactly as you are, no longer needing to put on those hats we sometimes have to wear. Just releasing, where you know you are accepted, completely accepted, no longer needing to jump through hoops and do or be anything other than who you find yourself to be at this moment. Both good and bad, noticing that these are simply judgments that arise from within the mind and then releasing them. Good habits, bad habits, again judgments, making peace, releasing, letting go, arriving into the space of complete making peace with the present moment around us, with the present moment that represents our emotions, the present moment that represents our body, no longer needing to define it as too short, too tall, too this, too that. Again, releasing, releasing, embracing, allowing, seeing perfection in this present moment. I'll ring the bell now. An opportunity to change postures, to have a sip of water, to stretch, to be kind to ourselves. Now continue with your awareness of your breath, but very gradually notice how you're surrounded by some form of light. It may be natural light, it may be the light from some electrical bulb. But as you breathe in, let this light enter into your house, this house with its 5 doors, so that you bring light to this inner sanctum, this space within yourself. And so you breathe in this light and you visualize this light, and wherever it is you feel this sanctum is within your form. When I ring the bell, we let this light spread upward into that first door that we explored, our eyes, so that our eyes, we find our eyes bathed in this light that comes from this sanctum, this space of stillness, of kindness, of wisdom. And then we release an intention that this practice, it moves beyond the boundaries of this hour that we have together, that our eyes bathed in this light of awareness, will give us the ability to translate everything around us in a way that we somehow feel deeply appreciative of it. Wherever our gaze falls upon, that we see something to somehow be appreciative of. In many ways, what we're doing is we're using this space that we've created between the self and the mind to recognize that we have the ability to decide which filter we would use to translate the light that enters into our experience through our eyes. Almost as though that filter where we will see the glass as half full rather than half empty. And so the light, we bathe the whole light with the eyelids and the muscles behind the eyes, feeling the pressure within the eyes balance itself. And now we let this light spread towards our ears, that second door into our experience. And this light, having bathed this sense of hearing, that we allow into our experience only those sounds, words that bring kindness, nourishment, healing, smiles, laughter, connection, and all else that we would somehow feel better in the present moment with. And now, this light spreading towards the nose and the mouth where the sense of taste is. Because the sense of smell, that these two senses bathed in this light of awareness guide us in the food that we consume, and not only that, with the words that we use, that we have the ability to notice our thoughts before we speak and allow the kindness, the wisdom, the understanding, and all else that we can feel within the sanctum, that space of silence and kindness and wisdom within us. Allow that to flow through our vocal cords and our lips. And now the hands. This light of awareness reaching throughout our arms and our hands and our fingers, that they may serve, that they may perform acts of kindness, both for ourselves and those around us, and those far, far away from us as well, because in today's digital world, so much can be accomplished irrespective of physical distance. And then the skin around us, reaching down into our legs, that these legs, they guide us in the perfect direction so that we no longer, we release the need for effort and just find ourselves in the right place at the right time. And of course, this applies to every cell in our body. That instinct, that knowing. And a good example, one of the teachers, I'm sure you've all heard it as well, is that if we were to look for the sunset but walk east, no matter how much we ran, no matter how much effort we put into it, we would never arrive at that beautiful sunset. So much effort, so much doing, just how many of us sometimes live our lives. But with the ringing of this bell, as the light reaches through our hands and our legs and every cell within our body, We will know it's as simple as simply stopping, turning around, and not even moving, just looking west, and the sunset will find us, a knowing that wisdom that we are beginning to tap into. Less effort, just being present in the now. But of course, we like action, so we might take a few steps west. We might find buses and cars and drive and take trains, but the journey becomes so much more enjoyable because we know we're going to get there and it's all going to be okay. And now the final bell. Where we remind ourselves represents the beginning of our practice, where we bring this light with us, tuning into it, allowing it to guide us as we move through our evening and our days from moment to moment and breath to breath.
Oh, thank you, Vinesh.
Thank you for joining me. And hello, Julie. Is Milo around? Look who I have here upstairs. Did you hear their little monkey sounds that they were making? Well, thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. And it was a beautiful
Thank
little
you
group
so
we had.
much.
Deeply appreciate it. Have a lovely, lovely evening and weekend. Take care, my dear friends.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.